All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Modern Monk podcast. My name is Cormac Taylor. I'm here with Mr. Toby Chilver. How you doing, Tobes?
Feeling good, feeling fresh.
Yeah, mate.
Ready to go.
All right, let's do this. So today we're talking about taking on projects and side quests. So to start with, what is a project or a side quest?
Yeah, an important question. I think the first thing that comes to mind for the general population might be things tied in with hobbies or just general activities that people are doing. But I know when you and I talk about the projects and the side quests that we're taking on, there's certainly a goal-oriented aspect to them. There's an end goal to which this activity, this project is working towards. And I think because it is goal-oriented, you almost want to work backwards when you're thinking about them. But generally, yeah, it's something that's progressing you towards a predetermined outcome, and you're on a journey of reflection and improvement. You're actually making changes to what you're doing to kind of continuing the learning and kind of evolving process. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big differentiator between just a hobby or just an action that you're taking. Like if you just play rugby with your friends for fun and like that's just a hobby you have, like that's well and good, that's a good thing to have in your life. But if you're not consciously making decisions about how you're improving or you're not trying to win your championship, that's not a project or a side quest, that's just a hobby.
Okay, so you're separating doing an action from having a specific goal in mind from what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely kind of intention behind it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think most of us have what we would consider like our main quest, right? The main storyline mission, which is probably, one or two things. It's probably working on your business for most people or some sort of career-oriented thing. And then maybe you have some health thing. But everything that's not related to that main goal, I see that as the side quest, things you're doing outside of your main objective. And it's going to be something that you are consciously working towards to get to an outcome, whatever outcome that may be. But it's peripheral to your main goals and it doesn't detract from what you're doing. So a side quest doesn't have to take away from what you're doing, what you're working towards, but it has to be separate, right? If you're working on your business, then your side quest isn't like a subsidiary part of your business. It has to be sort of a different dimension and a different aspect to your life. And we'll talk about this later in the episode, but I think a big part of taking on a side quest is doing something that evolves your character or shapes you in some way outside of what you're currently doing.
That's a really important differentiator that I didn't even think to make, that it's separate from your main objective in life, or the main purpose, the main task that you're working on. And it's not just a sub-task of that you break off into a separate area that's still feeding into that project.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's sort of an overview on what a project or a side quest is, how we see it. So what other projects, what are the side quests that we're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, let's rattle some off and then let's talk about them.
Yep.
So running a marathon a month.
Yep.
100 kilo bench press for as many reps as possible every month. Learning a language. And I guess, it's a main quest is the business venture, is the kind of entrepreneurial side of life. For me, the last one that I have is about connection and just like connection to people and to family. But yeah, those are kind of the side quests. And you can see already that they're kind of split into the domains of life that I've prioritized, which is health, and connection with people.
Yeah,
so
the health and relationships.
Well, like I started talking about, you're working backwards from goals. Like if you start with what you want your dream life to look like, you can already split that up into domains that need to be focused on. And then naturally the projects just kind of take their own form. But there's quite a lot there already.
Well, we talk about the big buckets in life. You have your health, your wealth, and your relationship buckets. And usually the wealth bucket, that's going to be your main quest. Generally, that's the thing that people are obsessing the most over. So as we could see from your side quest, your projects, a lot of them are based around health or relationships, filling up those other buckets as much as possible. So one of the things that you are doing is running the marathon a month. So I want to go into a bit more detail about that because you've been doing that for all of this year, and then last year, you started this the end of last year, didn't you?
Yeah, December last year was the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many marathons have you done now?
That's 11 total.
11 total. And you ran a 70K as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I got up to a 75K.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple months back.
Just crazy. What's your running history coming into taking on that project?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of running background as a kid, always did cross country, but then fell out of love with it, didn't like solo sports. So basically hadn't run until COVID, did like 6 months running then, ran my first half marathon, again, kind of dropped it, fell out of love with it. And it wasn't until I started increasing the distance and keeping things consistent that I started to enjoy it a lot more. And that's kind of why I ended up setting myself a goal that was basically all about consistency, which is just one marathon a month. So like on December 2024, I proved to myself that I could run a marathon. And then the goal was, okay, we'll do it again and again and again. And keep yourself fit and healthy year-round, injury-free, so that you can do that. And that's an interesting thing I just touched on there was setting a goal like running a marathon a month then gives you the side task of needing to keep yourself injury free for a year, which then gives you purpose behind your stretching and like your mobility work, which before I never had a reason to because it was never aligned with one of my goals. That's one of the great things about having side quests and projects like this. They give you motivation to do these things which you know are good for you, but you never had a reason to before.
And it's one of those things that we both prioritize very highly. And I think a character trait we both really want to embody is the consistency, being a consistent person. And I think that's a great one for that. Because you can't really mess around. Like if you're trying to run a marathon a month, you can't slip up all that much. And we've both had, we talk about avoiding injuries. We've both had our fair share of injuries this year, in fairness. But regardless, you've been able to maintain the marathon a month.
Yeah, and it's been a testament. It's kind of been the staple of this year, has been the marathon a month. It's centered my whole life and all my projects around consistency. And, you know, people are always very impressed when you talk about, you know, being able to do something like that. But that's me coming from my background. I want to hear about how your marathons are going, coming from your running background.
Yeah, so one of my projects as well is the Project Monthly Marathon. At the start of this year, you said, I'm going to run a marathon a month. And I said, you're insane. And then I went, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. Could I maybe do that? And then I sort of tried to start doing the maths. And I was like, yeah, maybe I could do this. This is going to be really tough, but I could probably do it. And so coming into this year, I hadn't run more than 10Ks in my entire life. I didn't really have any running background at all. It was not.
Madness.
It was bad. And then I said, all right, let's run a marathon a month. So I had to progress the running quite a bit. That came with a few problems, overuse injuries. But for the last 5 months, I've been able to run a marathon every month. Did the last one on Sunday. Done 3 with you, I think. One of the ones I did with you was your 70K, which was nice. I mean, I think I still struggled more than you, even though you were running 70 and I was only doing 40. But yeah, that's been a great project for me. I really love the monthly marathons. It's maybe for a bit of a different reason for you, but I love it because it's a real reset on what it means to be in pain, what pain really feels like. Because there is a difference between, you know, having to sit down and do some work or something slightly challenging and having to run 20 kilometers cramping the entire time. Like, I always have that frame of, oh, this is what pain really feels like. And it really centers you in what you're doing and you go, this really isn't all that bad. And every month I do a marathon, there's always another challenge and it's always incredibly painful. And you finish it and it's almost like you're reborn. It's like the month starts again, your life starts again. There's a new reset on pain and it all begins again. It's been one of the best things I've added to my life. And of course you have the consistency element as well, which I love. But the big thing for me has just been the reset on what pain really feels like. It's cool to be able to say you run a marathon a month. Like, I think it's a cool thing to be able to add to the character. And it was something that is very difficult to do because I think based on my fitness baseline, I shouldn't really be running a marathon a month. Like, I'm probably not fit enough to do it. So I do have to just grit my teeth and get through it, especially for this first year of running. But I've been able to get it done. But yeah, that was one of my big projects, and you're the reason that I do that, because otherwise I would have no ambitions to be running a marathon a month. So thank you for that. But yeah, that's one of my projects. Another one of my projects is also language learning. It is trying to become fluent in Spanish. My plan is to be fluent by the end of March. So I'm basically trying to go from incompetent to fluent in about 7 months. So that means my input is 4 hours a day of comprehensible input of Spanish content, which is pretty hard. Honestly, of all of the things I do in my life, that's probably the hardest thing I do, because you have to be really consistent. And that's what I like with a few of our projects here, is that it requires consistency. Because if you don't do a day of learning Spanish, it's not like you just didn't do a day. It's like tomorrow you now have 8 hours to do, you know? And it just compounds and adds up if you slip up. And I'm a few months in now. I've been able to keep the consistency, but it is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But I think the outcome of being able to learn a new language, being able to unlock, you know, a bunch of different countries, be able to talk and communicate with a lot of other people, I think it's a good goal to have and a good objective to have. So that's another one of the projects.
I mean, it's definitely filling up that connection bucket like you talked about. Like it's opening your ability to connect with people in a place that you want to visit and live and interact in.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But it's really cool listening to you talk about resetting this like pain anchor to something that's really difficult and really painful, like the marathon every month. And it makes me think about how we approach these projects in general, which is a full foot on the gas until it breaks and then fix it and go again. We didn't spend 3 months planning the training regime and like thinking about what the route's going to be and, you know, picking an event and signing up for it. It was just like, go do it. Something will break, we fix it and we go again. And I think that's something that you can take away from both of our approaches that has served us very well. It's quicker, you get more done, and you get more out of it in terms of like a character and a story.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, because that is exactly right. This is one of the things I've added this year, like a new thing I've added to my life, and it's the first time I've been able to implement this idea of just not overanalyzing, not overthinking, just taking action until something breaks and then fixing it. And realistically, the only people that have given me advice, well, actually the only person is you. The other thing is ChatGPT, but I basically received no advice on it. And in fairness, I don't know how much you know about running, because I have no reference point, but it really helped, because after I've started running these marathons and doing these things, there's people I know who've run marathons and they message me and they're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't do it this quickly, or oh, you need to like take a break, or you need to, not do it. Or maybe you should only do a half marathon a month. And I'm just so glad I didn't have that at the start. I didn't have that person saying, no, this is not possible. Because when I came into this, I didn't really know what was possible. What was possible, what was impossible. I didn't really have any idea of what that was. I just went, okay, I'll just keep doing this until something breaks, fix it, and then keep going. So for example, for the first marathon, I cramped for 20 Ks. So then I went, okay, why did I cramp? Oh, well, we ran out of electrolytes about halfway through, and then I started cramping. So next marathon, I added electrolytes. And what happened? I crammed for 20 Ks. So we went back to the drawing board and went, okay, why did I cram this time? And it's like, oh, maybe there's not enough carbs. Then next marathon, add carbs in. What happened? We stopped cramping. Great. We fixed the cramping problem. What happened next marathon? Cramp for 10 Ks. Why did I cramp? Oh, the training wasn't right. But the point is, you keep testing and just taking action until something breaks, and then you fix it. And it's exactly what you said. And I think it is the best way of going about anything. There is a book that I haven't read, but I really like the title, and it's Ready, Fire, Aim. And it's the idea of you take action first and then you fix it later. Rather than sitting in that constant state of unknown and trying to overanalyze things and never taking any action. Because at the end of the day, the definition of learning is same condition, different behavior. And if you never change your behaviors, if you never take action, then you haven't learned anything in the first place. So I think you're right. Taking the action in the first place, it is the best way of going about learning, adapting, improving.
Yeah. And even just listening to you say it, and I bet people who are listening to this, it sounds so stupid. Like you just want to get it right. Everyone has that desire, and I think especially people that are in this sphere want to get things right, and they're willing to put in the time to get things right. But I think so many people let perfect get in the way of good, and they just never get it done, and then they switch to something else and take on some other project before they even had a chance to execute on their perfect plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is just the perfect antidote to that. So I challenge anyone who listened to that and maybe thought that's so stupid. Why wouldn't you just research, what's going to make me not cramp and what's going to do this, and like research everything first. Just try it with something small and just do it, and then figure it out for yourself. Because that journey, that personal journey of you experiencing the problem, fixing it for yourself, and then doing it again. Not only is it great for a great story that you tell, it's a great, moment of personal growth for you. But then you also get all these interesting perspectives on, I know what it's like when you run a marathon for the first time and you cramp. That's a problem you've experienced. That just unlocks so many doors for you.
Yeah. And if we think about the learning frame of learning just in time, not just in case, I reckon this is a very good example of that, because you can learn a bunch of things about how to avoid all of these problems, but chances are you're probably not going to run into most of them. There might be a few problems that you run into, and yeah, it might be a little bit more painful, but it's so much better than you sitting in the analysis phase, over-analyzing and never taking any action. Let's take the action first. Learn just in time, not just in case. Just what we need to actually get it done, and then just keep moving forward, and then keep adjusting, keep iterating over time. But it's that iterative process of learning through action, and I think that's been a big one for us this year.
And there's another big thing I want to touch on here, which is we're talking about projects and side quests here. For your main quest, it might be worth paying someone to gain their scars so you don't have to go through all of the pitfalls. Like if you need a bit of speed, you need to get things done, you don't want to go through all of those heartaches, those pains, worth it. For a side quest, the goal is to run a marathon a month for the rest of my life. The enjoyment comes from the journey of actually doing it, not speeding through it and getting so good at it that it's just like a 2-hour activity for me once a month. That is not what I want. Like I want to experience the pains and the troubles and fix it myself. And I think this wraps really nicely into projects and side quests, where it's not always about speed and getting to the conclusion really quickly. Sometimes it's about just learning for yourself, and that discovery and that learning.
Yeah, enjoying the journey, and that's what we've certainly been doing.
Yeah, we're trying our best, that's for sure.
We are.
A bit hard to enjoy when you're 20 kilometers of cramping, but
we're getting better.
Does his best.
We're getting better. All right, so how do side quests, how do they shape our character?
It's a great question. Because we're talking about doing things that are difficult, we're selecting for values and traits that we're going to have. Because if you think about it in reverse, when you pick a goal, there's certain requirements to meet that goal. There's certain challenges you have to face. And in facing those challenges, you'll gain certain traits. So if I said, the goal is to sit in front of a blank wall and do nothing for 3 hours, okay? The challenge is that you're gonna have to overcome boredom. And so by taking on that project, you will gain patience, and that will form part of your character. So you can see how all of these things eventually just become part of who you are. And I think it relates to a core idea that I want to get your perspective on is, are you as a person just what you do? Like, are you just a collection of things that you do? Or are you, if you did nothing, who are you? Because the way I see it, you are what you do. What you do shapes who you are. They're so interlinked. I think sometimes that can be a little bit negative if you're basing your value off achievements of things you've done. But I think the benefit that you get from defining your character in the things that you do and the value you get from those things is outweighs the negative.
That's so interesting. I haven't actually really heard of that concept before, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And even though you said it may in some way make you tied to the achievements that you've had, but I actually think it's the opposite in some sense, that you're tied to the actions you take, not the outcomes that you've received. So I actually think that is an amazing way to think about yourself, because a lot of people are tied to whether it's your net worth, whatever accomplishments you have in your life. But rather than that, it's what are the actions I take? Because if tomorrow you start doing nothing, and if you continue to do nothing, then you are going to become a shell of your former self. You don't take on the same value as a person that you were. And I think that's actually a very, very interesting concept. And I think that's right. You are the actions that you take, because the actions are the only things that can influence the outcomes in your life. If you're taking the right actions, it's going to shape you into quite the person.
Yeah, that's an important differentiation between achievement and actions, I think, because you're in control of the actions you take. And you're so right. You can think about the billionaire who's got it all, who just sits on his couch all day, who that person is, and the billionaire who still picks up a rock and walks up a mountain just cause. Like that's a different type of person. But if you look just on paper, they're the same person. The only difference is the actions that they're choosing to take then. And it's even more impressive then if you know, the intent behind it changes, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that is a good point. So look, the way I think about these projects and taking on a form of your character is, I see them as adding layers to you. If you think about yourself as an onion, it's really just adding layers to you as a character. Because for a lot of us right now, we say we do nothing, but when we say we do nothing, what it means is we're watching TV and we're scrolling and we're playing video games. Because no one says, oh, what did you do today? Oh, I scrolled and played video games and watched TV. They say I did nothing, right? But when you're adding layers to the onion, adding layers to the character, you're becoming that person who, you know, runs a marathon a month, knows multiple languages, is in great shape, has their business, all these things. But it's layers to the onion. And when you're adding extra parts to your character, you're just growing and expanding as a person. So you could just be John the accountant who goes home and watches TV. Or you could be John the accountant that knows a few languages and runs a marathon a month. You're just adding dimensions and layers to yourself as a character. And I think if you don't do these things, if you're just the person who does whatever work they have to do and then goes home and just indulges in impulsive pleasures, you're essentially just restricting the amount of layers that you can add to yourself as a person. But when we can add these things in, you just become a more multi-dimensional person. Because cool, you could be a millionaire, but is that it? Is that the only part to you as a person? Is you're just the person who has money? How many layers are there to you? I think the more layers there are, the more interesting you become. And also the more interesting your life becomes as well. If you have multiple dimensions, multiple projects that you're working on, I think it leads to a more interesting way of living.
I think it's an interesting perspective to look at it from the outsider looking at you, the onion. You know, are you interesting to this person, or are you just John the accountant? I think it's easier for people to conceptualize that. But what's also really true is that by you becoming a more interesting person, your life improves. Like you are the one that spends 100% of your time with yourself. So you benefit the most when you add layers to your onion. So yeah, it's also good, you know, that you get to interact with people and you know, form those connections and all those other things. But you're the one who's living with yourself. So you are benefiting the most from this. So don't forget that it's not just so you can say I run a marathon and you can tell people about it. It's how it makes you feel, and it's because it makes you who you are.
That's a good point. Yeah, we should make sure that we're not saying that we don't want to just do these side quests, these projects, just to add things to the CV so people can point at you and say, oh, look at you, you've achieved all these things. They should be things that you think would meaningfully add to your life and benefit you in some way and improve your character in some way, that you can look at yourself and say, I'm proud of myself for what I've done. I like these things that I'm moving towards. I like how this expands me as a person, rather than these are just little things that I can add to my CV to point at and say, this is why I'm a cool person.
Yeah, if you think about, do you want to be that person? Even if no one knew that they did those things, do you think it would feel good to be that person? That's probably a good North Star.
It's a good point. Okay, so what quests do we want to take on in the future?
I want to throw this to you first. I'm really interested to hear what you have in store.
So right now, I think I'm in a position right now where I'm quite full in terms of, I'm now not doing any of these impulsive pleasures. I'm not wasting any time. So all my time is in one way or the other going towards my main goal or some sort of project. We currently have the Project Monthly Marathon. We are learning we're learning a new language and trying to get in good shape, right? Kind of bodybuilding style stuff, you know, trying to get strong. The next one that we're really going to add is the world traveling. We're probably going to start living in a few cool places. The plan is by the end of 2027 to have lived in at least 8 countries. I think that will be a very, very interesting way to live. When I say this, people see it as, oh, so you're going to go on holidays for 2 years. And it's not the case. It's more that I'm going to bring what I'm doing right now and do it in different parts of the world. Nothing much about the way that I'm currently living will change, but I just get to experience different parts of the world. And I think it's going to add a lot to me as a person, being able to live in different areas. So that's definitely a big one. And then on top of that, by the end of 2027, I would also like to have learnt and become fluent in 3 different languages. So have 4 languages total under my belt. And I think after that, I'm not going to worry about languages. That'll probably be it for languages. But those are probably the 2 big quests I see coming in the future. And I think they will take up a lot of the time I'm not spending on the main goal.
And I want to get your opinion on travel in general, because it's such a big topic. And I think it's such a multiplier for your experience and your growth and your opportunities as a person. Because there's a sense of finding your tribe, hunkering down, existing in the place you are, that is comfortable and that a lot of people default to. And I think when you break out of that, not only are you forced to lose connection to the tribe, to the hunkering down, you're placed in a brand new spot with fresh faces, with new experiences, but there's also a completely different culture, way of life, thinking that you are dropped into. And I think that acts as a multiplier. So is that something you share?
Yeah, huge. I mean, the change of environment is great for so many reasons. Of course, you have the cultural immersion aspect. You get to experience the way other people live. You realize, so when the place I grew up isn't the only place in the world. There's lots of other places. They're not as scary as they seem, right? They have different ways of doing things, and that's great. But I think the other big thing, especially the way that we intend on doing this, probably being in a new place every 2 months or so, is every time you change your environment, it's a time to change your habits and change who you are. And when you're accelerating that process so much, where it's a new place every 2 months, I think it's actually going to speed up our rate of growth, our rate of personal development very quickly. Because if you think about what is stopping you from taking on this new thing, this new goal, and when people have their justifications why they don't do it, the way they procrastinate, they say, oh, I'll wait till this happens, or I'll wait till that happens. And it's usually a change of environment in one way or the other. Oh, I'll do this when I finish university. Or I'll do this when the year ends. I'll do this when I finish my job, right? And it's always when the environment changes. And I think when the environment constantly changes, and it's changing quite rapidly, I think the rate of growth happens really quickly because you're constantly changing, constantly evolving, and constantly improving. And you're always outside your comfort zone. And in the last podcast, we talked a bit about comfort. I think it was the last podcast. And you're talking about how comfort can never happen if you're within yourself. It only happens when you're slightly pushing yourself beyond your limits and pushing yourself outside of this comfort zone. And I think constantly being in new environments, immersing yourself in new places, brings you out of that comfort zone. And I think it will increase your rate of growth as a person.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And it's interesting really to think about the fact that we've made travel kind of a project or side quest in itself. I know it's kind of linked to the languages and some of the other stuff, but just hearing you talk about it made me think you really don't put a limit on what is a project and what is a side quest. Like, you are the complete architect of your life, and you can make it something bizarre, something unique. It doesn't have to be running or something that is very well known. Like making travel one of your side quests, and making it fit into your lifestyle and the goals that you have. Yeah, I think it's been interesting to conceptualize it in that way.
And I want you to talk about what your projects are planned for in the future, but one of them will be traveling as well. We're going to be traveling together next year. So I want to get your thoughts on what excites you about this project. What do you think it's going to unlock for you as a person? How do you think that's going to influence your character?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me comes back to what we talked about when we talked about environment, which was the people you surround yourself with. You talk about gauging, are you better as a person around these people or not? when you're consciously selecting your environment in the way that we are choosing to, you're putting yourself in a position to be surrounded by like-minded people who have shared interests, shared goals. I think when you stay where you've always existed or where you've gone through a period of change, you are then linked to the old habits, the old people, the old views, and that you don't always have that support, or you don't allow for that support to be found because you have this existing link to things. So that's definitely a huge part of it, is, who am I going to be surrounded by day to day? And the other part is really just a feeling of presence, of enjoying the journey and living your goal as you try and achieve it. I think the biggest thing for me is not thinking about anything in life as, oh, well, I have to suffer until I get X. Because then you're constantly suffering and X just moves further and further in front of you. So the choice to quit my job, start traveling and working on my business while I'm traveling, that's how I want to live my life, even when my business is at the point where I don't need it to grow anymore. So to be able to make the choice to be living that life while I'm chasing continuing it is a completely new concept to me, bar like 6 months ago.
Yeah, that is a huge point. When people have this idea, I want to create this business. Okay, why do you want to create the business? Oh, I want to be free. I want to have time freedom and I want to have location freedom. Why do you want to do that? Oh, I want to do that because I want to live in all these places in the world and I want to experience all these things. And people do that, and people will find success in their business. And it's like, okay, now what? You still haven't traveled, you still haven't done anything, you're still living the same life that you lived. You may as well have just got yourself a job. But I think one of the things that we're doing is we're just doing it so early. We're just starting, and it's just about maintaining and continuing to grow as you live the goal. As the goal is to maintain and continue to live the way you're living, and slowly you make improvements over time as we do. But I think that is going to be a huge one for us, is being able to live the goal, live the dream, rather than live for the dream.
And it kind of ties into what we were talking about with the project, with just like start and then fix. Live how you want to live. And then you run into a problem, or you're running out of money, or you're losing connection with your family, or like something's going wrong, fix it and keep going. Don't try and perfectly architect your life and wait for all the stars to align and everything to be in place to then do it, because that will never, ever, ever, ever happen.
Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. And especially for what we're doing, there is never a better opportunity for you to do it than right now. It'll always get harder. There'll always be more things. No one's life, until maybe you're in your 60s, no one goes year by year and gets less responsibility. You always get more responsibility. Everything always gets a little bit harder to make these hard life-altering decisions, and to think, oh, I'll wait until this changes. I'll wait until this, as you say, the stars align. You're insane. You just gotta say, all right, there is a bunch of limiting beliefs I hold here because I'm scared. Let's throw them aside and let's actually just take action, and let's do it until something breaks. And then guess what happens when something breaks? We're gonna fix it. And then something else is going to break and we'll fix that as well. But it is the iterative process of action and then adjusting over time and living the way you want to live now, rather than waiting for stars to align.
100%. And it leads me on to, when should anyone take on a project and a side quest? Because obviously we're saying now, do it now. There's no better time than right now. But if you're looking at an 8-year-old, you're not going to say right now's the time. So where do you find that balance? Where do you draw the line?
So like when we should take on these projects, is it has to be done in a way that you have your main goal. This project cannot detract from your main goal. You have a goal that you need to achieve, and I think this is the North Star, and you should be working towards this. But if you are taking on a project, it cannot be the opposite of what your main goal is. You know what I mean? If your goal is, for example, to get in incredible shape, get in the best shape of your life, and then you're going to say, okay, well, my side quest is to become a wine connoisseur and drink 2 bottles of wine every night. So, okay, your side quest is directly detracting from your main goal. So I think, first of all, it cannot be a sacrifice from your main goal. It also, You should not do this from a position of motivation. So when we have these projects, these ideas, aspirations that we want in our life, and we say, okay, I really do want to learn a new language. I don't think that we should take on these projects if it's a spur of the moment thing and we have motivation. Because what happens when the motivation dies down? What is the level of your standards? Because if you decide to take something on when you're feeling peak motivation, you're ready to do it, and then 2 weeks later you go, oh, this is actually really hard, you're not going to be able to stick with it. And the number one thing is consistency. So you may have an idea, you may have a goal. This may be a time where you sit on it for a week or two and you go, this is a good idea. Let's see if it's still a good idea in a week or two. Because the worst thing that we can do is jump straight into this when we're at a period of peak motivation, and then a few weeks later we just jump off, because it has to be done with consistency. And the other thing is that there needs to be some purpose and intent behind the quest that you're taking on. If your goal, if your side quest is, I want to solve a Rubik's Cube, I would ask you why. What's the goal of that, right? I'm going to spend 5 hours a day for 2 months learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Why? Why are you doing that? There needs to be some purpose and intent behind the goals you have. So I'll give you an example. Why I want to learn Spanish, right? I want to learn a new language.
Why?
The reason I want to do this is I want to unlock parts of the map. There is an entire continent there, South America, that just instantly gets unlocked when you learn a new language. You've just unlocked 500 or 600 million people that you can now talk to. It just adds a huge layer to your character. That's a good why. If your why for solving a Rubik's Cube is it's a cool party trick, maybe not the greatest reason to do something. I think there should be a clear why, a clear reason behind why you're taking on a project in a side quest.
Yeah, no, lots of interesting points touched on there. And I think it maybe sounds like we're giving a little bit of conflicting advice. Start now, there's no better time than now. Don't wait for the stars to align. But don't do it at peak motivation. Just sit on it a little bit. Just make sure it's actually what you want. And so what I would say is, it really depends on who you are and how much you've proved to yourself that you can be consistent. And I almost think that should be the basis of you starting on projects or side quests. Prove to yourself that you can be consistent. And so let's say your goal is to run a marathon a month. You can decide that today in peak motivation, but make your commitment to it really small. I'm going to stretch for 5 minutes when I get home from work every day. And that's moving me towards my goal, but it's a baby step. I'm not even running yet. But if you can do that for 2 weeks, that means the why is probably strong enough. You still committed to this goal. You actually want to do it. And you'll probably start thinking, okay, well, I actually want to start running now. I want to start doing it. You won't be, relying on motivation. It's not there, and then you stop stretching. If that happens, that's a good sign, okay? You didn't overcommit to the goal. You didn't start running 3 times a week and then that'd be the reason you burnt out. You allowed yourself the chance to prove to yourself that you can be consistent in chasing this. And then you're either successful in that and you continue building, or you go back to the drawing board. But that's an important moment of discovery for yourself that I think repetitions help with, is proving to yourself that you can be consistent doing something, relating it back to your why, and then either going for it or moving on to something else.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because the consistency is going to beat absolutely anything. So we need to make sure that is 100% there. And I think that's a good point, is that we need to define the inputs that are going to get us to our goal, but make the inputs such that you can actually do those inputs regardless of how you feel. Regardless whether it's high motivation or low motivation. If they're easy things for you to do, but you just can do them, then we slowly build up that trait of consistency, and then we can increase the inputs. We can make it harder and more difficult. But you're right, starting with that base where I can actually do this is a good place to start, because as soon as we can start ticking boxes and saying, yes, we did this, yes, we did this, yes, we did this, then we can slowly start building up. Then it can still slowly start getting harder. But until we have that trait of consistency, it's going to be very hard for us to achieve big goals, like doing the marathon a month, like trying to become fluent in a new language. Very hard to do if you don't first have that trait of consistency.
Yeah. I think another thing with these side quests and these projects, you've probably already started thinking about it in the back of your mind. And maybe you've started learning a little bit more about it to the point where it's a little bit scary. Because you kind of know just enough to know, okay, well, this isn't just going to be a walk in the park. And I think that is the moment that you start. When it feels a little bit scary, it's probably because you know enough. You know enough. You just need to jump in. And I think that's almost a lesson that we've learned over and over again, that when it's scary is the time to face it and walk towards, not walk away.
Well, you've probably passed the stage of the uninformed optimism. I think,
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's you're probably right. Yeah, when it gets a little scary, you're like, okay, I know enough information now. It's time to take the action.
It's time to prove it.
Yeah,
Prove
yeah.
it to yourself.
Very good, very good. All right, tell me, what are the 3 things I can do right now to start taking on some side quests?
So you have a goal. I'm going to start from there. You have a goal. You know what you want to do. The first thing I want you to do is to break it down into something you can do every day. So your goal should be big enough that it could take up lots of time in your day today. But I want you to strip it back down, break it down into something that's a small daily action. It allows you to build consistency, allows you to track progress. It just sets you on the right path, starting small, then wanting to do more. Then you're going to need to make yourself accountable. And this is going to look different for everyone. If you have good self-control and you can keep yourself accountable just as who you are by writing it down, any other way. For me, it's putting it on a whiteboard. Or you pick a friend. You're going to be my accountability partner. I'm telling you that I'm going to do this. You're going to ask me if I've done it. And that'll help you stay accountable and build that consistency. And the third thing, which is probably the most difficult, is to stop caring what everyone else thinks and do it for you. Because you want to do it, because of how it makes you feel, because it's developing your character, because you're the one who's going to benefit from it, because it's your life. So make it your project, your side quest. Don't care what anyone else thinks, because you do anything that isn't wasting your life watching TV, scrolling, you're going to get comments. Some of them might be a little mean, some of them might be backhanded, but don't let that deter you.
I love that. I love that. And a lot of what you just said was, let's take the action first, right? What are the actions we need to do? Let's do them. Let's be consistent. Let's make sure we hold ourselves accountable and do them. And then make sure it's something that you truly want to do, that makes you feel right as a person, that improves yourself as a character that you like, rather than what other people want from you. Because no one is going to have the same ambitions for your life as you will. And at the end of the day, it's your life. So who particularly cares what other people think about how you should be acting in your life? It is your decision at the end of the day of what you want to do. But primarily focusing on taking those actions seems to be the key theme of today, I guess, is taking the damn action.
Yeah, no, great summary there. Appreciate that. Now, what are your 3 things that I can do right now to start my project, my side quest?
So, first of all, we need to decide what the project and what the side quest is. I think a good way to think about this is, what would be the biggest upgrade on my character? What could I do? What project could I take on that could have the biggest upgrade on my character?
The most value.
Yeah. What is the most valuable thing that you can add to yourself as a person? And this doesn't have to be what other people perceive as the most valuable, but what you see adding to yourself as a character. What do you see to be the most valuable thing? Identifying what is that quest? What does that look like? What do I have to do? And then step 2 is you need to define the inputs. You spoke about it. What are the things you need to do? What are the inputs that are going to get me to that goal? Because a lot of goals, a lot of achieving things, it's just an equation. It is, these inputs will lead to this outcome. So then you just need to take the inputs, take the action. So next thing would be, you need to define what the inputs actually are, right? So for example, my goal of becoming fluent in Spanish, well, I want to take on this quest. I think this would add a huge amount to my character. Okay, what do I need to do to get to that goal? Right, well, I need to spend 4 hours a day on average consuming Spanish content for 7 months, and then I'll be conversationally fluent, right? Those are my inputs. If I do these actions, it would be unreasonable that I don't get to my goal. Those are the inputs. And then the third step would be incorporating this into your life. If it is going to become a quest, a side quest, a goal, it needs to be something that you can have in your life and you can do consistently, right? Word of the day, consistency in action, right? But it needs to be something that you can do in your life and you can weave it in a way that it becomes part of you and part of who you are. For a lot of us right now who are spending time scrolling, spending time playing video games, watching TV, doing these things, you need to ask yourself, well, what am I willing to sacrifice to make sure that these inputs can become a part of my life? For me, it was a very simple one for the Spanish. It was, well, if I get rid of watching TV, binge watching YouTube, doing all of this quick dopamine stuff, I can just replace that with watching Spanish. If I just replace that, I can get probably 3 hours a day in. Then maybe I have to consciously try and add another hour a day in, but I can weave that into my lifestyle very easily. If your goal is to run a marathon a month and you say, okay, I'm gonna run sometimes. So, okay, when? How often? How are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it? It has to become part of your lifestyle, because if you're doing something that takes you out of your flow, out of your environment, out of the way you currently live, it's very hard to do that on a consistent basis. So I think finding a way to have it a part of your lifestyle, a part of the way you live, is very important, because it gives you that consistency. It allows you to take that action, and those actions, those inputs are the things that are going to get you to that outcome. So define the goal. What am I trying to get done? What is going to add the most to my character? Define the inputs. What are the inputs required to get me there? And then find a way to incorporate it into your life, to weave it in so it becomes part of who you are, part of how you behave on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting point, that last one, because we talk about the side quest building your character, but we're also talking about interweaving who you are into what you do. So it's almost like it's a mutual relationship there, that you can craft an environment, you can take on tasks that are so similar to who you are and what you do. They're just slightly different in reality, but they're connected to this project, which is going to develop your character. And it's again like a self-fulfilling prophecy here. Yeah. That it feeds back in when you're changing an input that is net negative of just consuming entertainment, and you're able to replace it with something that's net positive, any side quest that's valuable to you. That then boosts your character, which then allows you to attack more ambitious project side quests and or just progress them faster or enjoy them more.
Yeah.
And you get to live in that loop, that self-fulfilling prophecy of positive net behavior, rather than time going past while you're just consuming entertainment, then feeling bad about how you haven't done anything, and you're comparing yourself to all these people who are doing things. And you get stuck in this negative loop of, oh, it's also like that's like such a big thing that they're doing, and oh, that's way too difficult. That's a bit scary. I'm just going to resort to comfort, and so I'll just watch something.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a good point that we talk about the entertainment and the cheap, easy stuff. And I think a lot of people might watch this and think, yeah, but I don't have time to run a marathon a month. I don't have time to learn a new language. I don't have time to do any of these things. But look at your screen time. You're telling me you don't have time, but you do have time to scroll, and you do have time to watch TV, and you do have time to do these things. And really what we're doing is we're replacing what we would both consider is probably the lowest ROI activities that you can possibly do with something that's just more fulfilling, something that improves you as a person and improves you as a character. And when we look at the cheap dopamine activities, the scrolling, the gaming, the binge watching, these things are not only big time drains, but they're also down-regulating your dopamine receptors. They're wiring your reward system to want to do these activities more often. They're making it a lot harder for you to take actions that are moving you towards goals. So when you do these behaviors more often, it becomes harder to do things that move you towards your goals. And what we've done by removing these things is made it a lot easier to move towards your goals. Give yourself a lot more time where you go, oh, I can do everything I'm doing right now, and I can learn a new language, and I can run a marathon a month. Get all that time back, and at the same time, you're wiring your reward system to actually enjoy and crave these behaviors, which makes it more likely you do them. And if you're more likely to do them, you're more likely to be consistent. And if you're more likely to be consistent, you're more likely to achieve the outcome. And that's when you talked about that loop, that positive loop, I think it's where it kicks into gear big time.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting to the core of what it is to be a modern monk now. And it's that added benefit of resetting your levels of dopamine so that what you perceived as hard is no longer as hard just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't even know if half the things I do right now would be possible if I hadn't reset my dopamine to some level. Because yeah, they are quite hard, but it's all about like what your baseline is, what you're anchored to. And if you're always anchored to some sort of social media or gaming or whatever, the anchor is just so low. It's so low because it's instant dopamine for absolutely zero effort, zero consistency, zero input. You're not doing anything to get that. So you're making the rest of your life much more difficult.
Yeah. And as you say, it makes everything easier. And of the things you do, you run a lot, right? You do a lot of difficult runs. Do you enjoy them?
Yeah, I do. I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to continue if I wasn't getting some level of joy. Yes, there's pain, but there's also joy, fulfillment, there's pride.
I think that's the big thing is a lot of people look at some of the things we do and they go, I wouldn't want to do that because I don't like it. But you maybe don't like it right now, and as you talked about the anchor, because you do a lot of easy things that feel really good. But when you start to do these things, you start to really like them. When I first started out going to the gym, when I was, 17, 18 years old, I didn't like the gym. I didn't find it fun. When I first started running, I didn't like running. I didn't find it fun, but you start to love it. And especially when you don't have these anchors, you don't have these easy things that feel really good, these start to become the pleasures and the joys in your life. Like I bet you find that the long runs that you do on a weekend might be one of the most enjoyable things that you do in your week. Being able to run outside in the sun with a friend, like that's probably an incredibly enjoyable part of your week.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more.
We didn't actually get to this, but what are your big quests that you want to take on in the future? What are the big projects you want to take on?
It's interesting because next year I'm keeping running one marathon a month, the same goal. It's kind of like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Like consistency is really the goal here. And so I'm just doing the same. Like I mentioned that I ran 75 kilometers and that was me getting bored of the consistency. Like, oh, well, it itself isn't super challenging now. I got to do something, got to add to it. I got to make it more difficult. And, ran the 75K and that was more difficult, but what am I really trying to do here? Am I trying to become an ultra marathon 100K person? No, that's not my goal. And I think it touches on an important thing there of not getting caught up in your side quest to where it leads you down to away from what your goal is. So staying connected to the why and to what your goal is, I think, is important. And that's why a marathon a month is staying exactly as it is. To travel, like to do this 2 months new country experience, that's going to be a huge new chapter.
We won't specify where we're going, but we will specify that we're going to be living in 5 different countries next year.
Yeah, which is a lot. It's going to be a lot of new experiences to take on. And to be honest, there's not a lot else that I have planned right now. I'm kind of focused on the goals that I have and finishing out the year. Or not even finishing out the year, finishing out this chapter. And I think when the next chapter starts, I'm going to allow myself a bit of time to realign and see what is appealing to me, see what my why is telling me to do. I think sometimes people can get trapped in planning too far ahead to, too many goals too far in the future. And the reality is you're adding to your character as you get there. And that means that what you want and who you are and what you're going to be capable of is going to change.
That's a huge point. I think we should plan ahead in that we should have a rough idea of what our end goal is going to look like, what we want our life to look like. But planning too far ahead, I have never ever found that to be helpful. Planning even a year in advance, it just doesn't make, for most things, it does not make sense. Maybe like your living arrangements or things like that. But the actual actions you need to take, it does not serve you at all, in my opinion, to be planning that far ahead. You should be looking at your boots, not looking at the summit. You should really be thinking, what can I be doing right now? And sure, you should have the North Star, you should have the final goal there, but don't plan what you're going to do 2 years ahead, right? Just focus on what you're doing right now, because I really see that a little bit as mental masturbation, going, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this in 2 years' time. It's like, you don't know what you're going to be doing in 2 years' time. Just focus on what you're doing right now. And sure, you should have the end goal, but that's not where we should be looking.
Yeah, 100%. Look at your boots. Look at what's right in front of you. Focus on the consistent actions that are actually taking you there. And the rest will kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, I agree completely. All right, well, that was episode 4 of the Modern Monk podcast. We're going to jump into a Q&A for everyone inside of the Modern Monk community. If you're not in there, then what are you doing? What are you doing?
Jinx.
You can join, and if you join, it is free. You will get access to be able to watch this live, ask us Q&As afterwards, and get the recordings when they come out rather than a month later, because we record these and post them a month in advance if you're watching this outside of the community. So if you want the early access, if you want to be able to talk to us, then join the community. Otherwise, we'll see you in a few weeks, or we'll see you in a week.
Or we'll see you in the community.
See you then.